a bright and cheerful forest called Maple Hollow. The trees were dressed in fiery oranges, deep reds, and golden yellows. Leaves danced on the breeze like crunchy confetti. It was a time of year when every creature felt a little tingle of excitement in their fur or feathers because Halloween was almost here. Halloween in Maple Hollow wasn't scary. It was fun. A day to dress up, share treats, play games, and walk together in the magical Halloween parade under the moonlight. At the edge of the forest, beneath a twisty old maple tree, lived a soft white bunny named Snow White. Snow White had fluffy, snowy fur that looked like whipped cream, with shiny dark eyes full of wonder, and a tiny pink nose that wiggled when she was curious, which was often. She was kind and thoughtful, but sometimes a little shy. On this sunny autumn morning, Snow White popped out of her cozy burrow and stretched her fluffy paws. Today's the day we start planning the Halloween parade, she squeaked excitedly. As she hopped through the golden forest, she spotted her friend Tilly the turtle by the pumpkin patch. Tilly was a small, round turtle with a mossy green shell covered in tiny golden speckles. She had bright eyes that twinkled behind her tiny round glasses, and she always carried a tiny notebook strapped to her back for writing important things. "Morning, Tilly," said Snow White. "What are you going to be for Halloween?" Tilly smiled. "I'm thinking of being a wizard turtle, with a tall hat and sparkly cape. Want to help me pick pumpkins for the float?" Just then, a fluttering shadow zipped past. It was Bella the Bat, who swooped down gracefully from a high branch. Bella had soft black wings, a round furry face, and wore a tiny purple scarf with silver stars on it. Her ears were big and pointy, and she always had clever ideas. "Oh, I heard we might build the biggest pumpkin float ever this year," she squeaked, hanging upside down from a low branch. "I'll bring the glitter." Snow White, Tilly, and Bella laughed and began picking the roundest, silliest pumpkins they could find. Tall ones, tiny ones, ones with curly stems and funny bumps. As they worked, none of them noticed the quiet rustle in the bushes nearby. From behind a tree, a pair of glowing eyes watched. The creature stayed hidden, peeking through leaves. It had a soft gray coat, a striped fluffy tail, and big eyes filled with curiosity, but it didn't step out. Snow White paused and looked around. "Did you hear that?" Bella flapped her wings. "Probably just a squirrel." But the eyes blinked, and the shadow tiptoed away. Who was that? And why were they hiding? As the sun dipped lower in the sky, the friends gathered near the clearing to plan the rest of the Halloween parade. "We'll need music, costumes, lanterns, and pumpkin snacks," said Snow White, hopping in a happy circle. Tilly added, "and a cozy float with twinkle lights and streamers." Bella twirled in the air. "And don't forget the spooky dance contest." All around Maple Hollow, animal friends began decorating weaving vines, hanging glowing mushrooms, and preparing sweet forest treats. But deep in the trees, the quiet creature watched and whispered, "I wish I could join, but what if they don't like me?" And with that, The shadow vanished into the misty woods. The sun was sitting over Maple Hollow, painting the treetops with streaks of pink and orange. The whole forest glowed like a lantern, and tiny sparkles floated on the wind. It was finally time for the Halloween parade. In the middle of the clearing, the animals had gathered. There were paper lanterns glowing with soft golden light, pumpkin treats stacked in baskets, and the biggest float anyone had ever seen, a rolling wooden cart covered in leaves, vines, and a giant smiling pumpkin on top. Snow White the bunny stood at the edge of the float. Her snowy white fur shone like moonlight, and her long ears were tied gently with orange ribbons. Her pink nose twitched with excitement, and her bright black eyes sparkled as she looked at her friends. Tilly the turtle waddled up next. She wore a shiny wizard hat and a sparkly purple cape that trailed behind her shell. Her gold-speckled green shell glimmered in the lantern light, and her twinkly eyes peeked proudly from behind her glasses. Bella the bat fluttered down from the trees in a swirl. She had tied tiny glittery stars to her ears, and her soft black wings had been dusted with silver shimmer. Her purple scarf with stars flapped in the breeze as she spun in circles above the float. "Everyone looks amazing," said Snow White with a happy hop. "Let's begin the parade." The forest came alive with music, not loud music, but happy music made from drums, wooden flutes, and the sound of acorns tapping together like tiny bells. Lanterns bobbed, costumes sparkled, and animals twirled and marched along the leaf-covered paths. But far away, at the edge of the trees, the mysterious creature watched again. It was a small raccoon with fluffy gray fur, a long striped tail, and soft black circles around big, shiny eyes. He had made a costume from twigs and leaves, but he wasn't sure it was good enough. "I want to join," he whispered, "but what if they laugh at me?" The music floated toward him. Laughter, clapping, and happy squeaks filled the air. Back at the parade, Snow White stood tall on the float. "Time for the spooky dance contest," she called out, and animals cheered. Tilly twirled in her cape. Bella did a spin and flap. Even a squirrel did a silly wiggle with a pumpkin hat. Suddenly, from the shadows, a leaf rustled. A head peeked out. The raccoon took one brave step, then another. Snow White turned and gasped gently. "Hello," she said kindly, hopping down. "What's your name?" The raccoon gulped. I'm Rascal," he said quietly. "I wanted to come, but I didn't know if I belonged." Snow White's eyes softened. "Of course you belong. Your costume is wonderful." Tilly stepped forward and smiled. "You look like a forest explorer." Bella flapped happily above. "And you came at just the right time. There's still time to dance." Rascal's striped tail curled shyly, but his eyes lit up. "Really?" Snow White nodded. "Really?" And with that, the small raccoon joined the parade. He wasn't nervous anymore. The lanterns glowed a little brighter, and the music grew a little sweeter. Together, they danced beneath the moon, paws tapping, wings fluttering, and tails twirling. The Halloween parade had found its newest friend. The moon had risen high over Maple Hollow, casting silver light through the treetops. Lanterns glowed like cozy stars along the parade paths, and the forest buzzed with laughter and the crunch of tiny paws and feet in fallen leaves. Snow White as a sparkling snow, the bunny stood proudly on the float once more. Her soft white fur glistened in the moonlight, and her long ears still held their orange ribbons. Her dark eyes twinkled as she looked around at all her friends, glowing with happiness. Beside her was Rascal, the raccoon who had been shy before. He now wore his leaf and twig costume proudly. His fluffy gray fur, striped tail, and shiny black eyes made him look like a real forest adventurer. Tilly the turtle marched in front, her wizard hat bouncing with every step, her sparkly green shell catching the moonlight. Bella the bat swooped gently above, her silver-dusted wings glowing as she twirled through the sky. Her starry purple scarf floated behind her like a ribbon of night. "Best Halloween ever," said Snow White softly. But just as the music swelled and everyone was ready for the final spooky parade march, a strong wind rushed through the trees. "Whoosh! Oh no!" cried Bella, spinning in the air. The float, the decorations, leaves scattered, lanterns wobbled. The big smiling pumpkin at the top of the float began to roll right off the back. "It's rolling toward the stream," shouted Tilly. Snow White's ears flew up. "We have to stop it." But the pumpkin was already bouncing down the hill faster and faster. Everyone gasped until Rascal jumped forward. "I've climbed that pass before. I know the quickest way down." He raced off on his tiny paws, his striped tail waving behind him. Snow White turned to the others. "Let's follow him. He's our best chance." Together, the animals bounded after Rascal through the crunchy leaves. He darted between roots, dashed over mossy logs, and slid down the hill like a furry leaf. At the bottom, the pumpkin wobbled toward the stream's edge. Just one more bump and it would be gone. Rascal leapt. He wrapped his little arms around the pumpkin and hugged it with all his might. "Got it!" he squeaked. Snow White arrived right behind him, out of breath but smiling wide. "You did it," she said. Rascal looked up. "I just trusted my feet." Tilly and Bella skidded to a stop beside them. "You were amazing," cheered Bella. "You saved the whole parade," added Tilly. Back at the clearing, everyone worked together to lift the pumpkin back onto the float. They fixed the leaves, relit the lanterns, and made everything even more beautiful than before. As the music started again, Snow White looked at her friends, the wise turtle, the sparkling bat, and the brave raccoon. She smiled and said, "Halloween isn't just about costumes and candy. It's about celebrating together and helping each other shine." That night, the forest glowed not just with lanterns, but with friendship. And as the final parade float rode through Maple Hollow, everyone clapped and cheered, and little Rascal, sitting proudly on top of the smiling pumpkin, waved to the stars.